Welcome to this video of basic arithmetic operations. Today, we'll cover the 4 basic arithmetic operations: addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. By the end of this video, you should have a solid understanding of how to perform each operation and when to use them. Let's start with addition. Addition is the process of combining 2 or more numbers to get a sum. For example, if you want to add 2 and 3, you simply write them down and add them together. 2 plus 3 equals 5. Next up is subtraction. Subtraction is the process of taking away one number from another. For example, if you want to subtract 3 from 7, you can write it like this: 7 minus 3 equals 4. Now let's move on to multiplication. Multiplication is the process of repeated addition. For example, if you want to multiply 2 by 3, you add 2 to itself 3 times. 2 plus 2 plus 2 equals 6. Or you can use the multiplication sign. 2 times 3 equals 6. Finally, we have division. Division is the process of splitting a number into equal parts. For example, if you want to divide 6 into 3 equal parts, you write it like this: 6 divided by 3 equals 2. You can check your work by multiplying your answer with the second number in the problem, called the divisor. So, you can multiply 2 by 3, as we did in the previous section. 2 times 3 equals 6. Or 2 plus 2 plus 2 equals 6. Now that we've covered the basics of each operation, let's go a little deeper into each one, starting with addition. There are different types of addition problems, such as 2-digit addition, adding decimals, and adding fractions. Let's start with adding decimals. Adding decimals is just like adding whole numbers. You simply line up the decimal points and add the digits together. For example, if you want to add 3.5 and 2.8, the addition is written like this: 3.5 plus 2.8, with a line underneath instead of an equal sign. When adding numbers with more than one digit, always start with the digit on the right and work towards the digit on the left. 0.5 plus 0.8 equals 1.3. We'll put the 0.3 in the tenths decimal place underneath the line. But since 1 is a whole number and not a decimal, we will add it up above the 3. Now, we can add 1 plus 3 plus 2, which equals 6. So, we can put that in the ones place below our line in front of the decimal. This gives us the correct answer of 6.3. Now let's move on to adding fractions. Adding fractions can be a little more complicated than adding decimals, but it's not too difficult once you know the steps. For example, to add 1/3 and 2/5, you would follow these steps. Step 1. Find the smallest common denominator, which can also be referred to as the least common denominator. The denominator is the bottom number of the fraction. Since our fractions have different denominators, we can't add them quite yet. First, we need to change them so that they have the same denominator. To find the smallest common denominator, we need to list out the multiples of each denominator and find the smallest number that appears in both lists. In this problem, the denominators are 3 and 5. To find the multiples of 3 and 5, we'll multiply both by each whole number starting from 1 and list them out until we see a number that appears in both rows. To visualize it, we can create a table like this. We'll list 3 and 5 in their own rows, and each numbered column represents the number we will multiply 3 and 5 by to find their multiples. Starting with the 1 column, 3 times 1 is 3, and 5 times 1 is 5. Next, 3 times 2 is 6, and 5 times 2 is 10. 3 times 3 is 9, and 5 times 3 is 15. 3 times 4 is 12, and 5 times 4 is 20. 3 times 5 is 15. Let's pause here, since we remember that we also already listed 15 in the other row. We can see that 15 is the smallest number that appears in both rows of our table. So we know that 15 is the smallest common denominator for 3 and 5. Step 2 will be to convert the fractions so that they each have a denominator of 15. To do this, we will multiply both the numerator, which is the number on top, and denominator of each fraction by the same number we multiplied them with to get 15. According to our table, this means that we have to multiply 1/3 by 5, and we have to multiply 2/5 by 3. Let's write it out. 1/3 times 5/5 equals 5/15. 2/5 times 3/3 equals 6/15. Step 3. Add the numerators together while keeping the denominator the same. Since we converted the fractions using multiplication, the numerators are now 5 and 6, and the common denominator is 15 for both. 5/15 plus 6/15 equals 11/15. And there you have it! Adding decimals and fractions can seem daunting, but with a little practice, you can do it. Next step is subtraction. Similar to addition, there are different types of subtraction problems, such as 2-digit subtraction, subtracting decimals, and subtracting fractions. Let's take a look at a subtraction problem with decimals. In this problem, we're subtracting 3.2 from 6.5. To solve this problem, we start by aligning the decimal points, like we did with our addition problem. This is the easiest by writing the problem with one number over the other, like this. Now we can start subtracting from the rightmost digit like we did for addition. In this case, we have 5 minus 2, equaling 3. We can write this below the line, and since we know it's the 10th decimal place, we write a decimal point in front of it to give us 0.3. In the next column, we have 6 minus 3, which equals 3. Write this below, and we can see the answer is 3.3. Now let's try a subtraction problem with fractions. In this problem, we're subtracting 1/2 from 3/4. To solve this problem, we need to find a common denominator, just like we did for the addition problem. Let's create another table. We'll start with the 1 column again. 2 times 1 is 2, and 4 times 1 is 4. Next, 2 times 2 is 4. Let's pause here since we remember that we already listed 4 in the other row. 4 is the smallest number that appears in both rows of our table. So we know that 4 is the smallest common denominator for 2 and 4. Step 2 will be to convert the fractions so that they each have a denominator of 4. Just like our addition problem, we will multiply the numerator and denominator of the fractions by the same number we multiplied them with to get 4. According to our table, this means that we have to multiply 1/2 by 2. 1/2 times 2/2 equals 2/4. Since 3/4 already has a denominator of 4, we don't have to change this fraction at all. Step 3. Subtract the numerators of our new fractions and keep the denominator the same, just like we did in the addition problem. 3 minus 2 is 1, so the answer is 1/4. And that's how you subtract fractions. Now let's move on to multiplication. There are also different types of multiplication problems, such as multiplying two-digit numbers and multiplying decimals or fractions. Let's start with multiplication with decimals. To solve the multiplication problem with decimals, you need to follow the steps as with the whole numbers, but with one extra step. First, you multiply the two numbers together as you normally would. For example, if you want to multiply 2.5 by 4, you would write it like this: 2.5 with a multiplication sign and 4 written below it. Then, draw a line underneath it. We'll start by multiplying the digits on the right first. Now, we multiply 5 times 4, which is equal to 20. Since this is only for the number in the ones place, we will write 0 in the ones place and carry the 2 up above the 2 in the equation, so we can add that in later. Next, we multiply 2 times 4, which equals 8. Remember that we have to add our 2 back into the number in the tens place. The number in the tens place is 8. So, we will add the 2 to our 8 and get 10. Let's write 10 to the left of the 0 we wrote earlier. Now, here's the extra step. We have to place our decimal point back into the solution. To do this, start with the decimal all the way to the right of our solution. Now, count the number of decimal places in the problem. We have one number in the problem with a decimal, 2.5. There is only one digit behind the decimal, which means that there is only one decimal place in the problem. So we are going to move the decimal point over to the left by 1. When we do that, you will get our final answer of 10.0. Now, let's move on to multiplication with fractions. The first step is to multiply the numerators together in this problem. Our numerators are 1 and 2. When we multiply them together, we get 1 times 2 equals 2. The second step is to multiply the denominators together. Our numerators for this problem are 3 and 4. When we multiply them together, we get 3 times 4 equals 12. The last step we will do in this problem is simplify our fraction, which means reducing it to its lowest terms. After multiplying the numerators and denominators, we have the fraction 2/12. To reduce the fraction, we need to find the greatest common factor between 2 and 12, which means the largest number that both 2 and 12 can be divided by. We can find this by listing the whole numbers that can evenly go into 2 and 12. Let's think of some numbers that can be multiplied together to get 12. For example, we can multiply 2 and 6 together to get 12. We can also multiply 3 by 4 or 1 by 12. Let's put them in order. Now, with 2, we can only multiply 1 and 2 together to get 2. The greatest number that appears on both of our lists is 2. So to simplify our fraction, we will divide both the numerator and denominator by 2. When we divide both the numerator and the denominator by 2, we get 1/6 as the final answer. Finally, let's talk about division. Division also has different types of problems, such as dividing two-digit numbers, dividing decimals, and dividing fractions. Let's start with a division problem that involves decimals. In this problem, we want to divide 30 by 0.5. This is asking, how many times does 0.5 fit into 30? To solve this problem, we can use a method called long division. First, we write 30 under the division symbol and 0.5 outside of it. We can start by moving the decimal place in 0.5 to the right one place. So, it is now 5. Since we moved the decimal place in 0.5, we also need to move the decimal place at the end of 30. When we do this, we get 300. Now, we can divide 300 by 5. With long division, we'll start with the digit on the left. 5 cannot go into 3, so we can put a 0 above the 3. Next, we multiply 5 by 0 and get 0, which we write below the 3, and subtract. 3 minus 0 is 3. Then, we bring down the next 0, giving us 30. How many times does 5 go into 30? 6 times! Great job! We write 6 next to the 0 above the line and multiply 5 by 6 to get 30, which we'll write below and subtract. 30 minus 30 equals 0. Now, we pull down the last 0. 5 does not go into 0, so we write a 0 above the division line. Again, we multiply 5 by 0 and get 0, and write that down below. 0 minus 0 is 0, which means we have no remainder. We have no more numbers under the long division sign to move down, so our final answer is the number above the division symbol. We can ignore the first 0 since it has no value, and we see that our answer is 60. Therefore, 30 divided by 0.5 equals 60. Now let's move on to a division problem that involves fractions. In this problem, we want to divide 2/3 by 1/4. This is asking, how many times does 1/4 fit into 2/3? To solve this problem, we need to find the reciprocal of the second fraction and multiply it by the first fraction. We can find the reciprocal of the fraction by switching the places of the numerator and denominator with each other. This means that the reciprocal of 1/4 is 4/1. So we can rewrite the problem as 2/3 times 4/1. To multiply these fractions, we multiply the numerators and the denominators. This gives us 8/3. In our answer, the numerator is larger than the denominator, which means it is an improper fraction. This means we should express the answer as a mixed number. To do this, we divide the numerator by the denominator. When we divide 8 by 3, we get 2 with 2 left over, which we write out as 2 and 2/3. Therefore, 2/3 divided by 1/4 equals 2 and 2/3. Now that we've gone over the different types of problems for each operation, let's take a look at some word problems. Word problems can be tricky, but they're a great way to apply the basic arithmetic operations to real-world situations. Let's try a word problem that involves multiplication. This will help us see how multiplication can be used to solve real-world problems. Here's the problem. A farmer has 5 fields, each of which is 3/4 of an acre in size. How many acres of land does the farmer own in total? To solve this problem, we need to multiply the number of fields by the size of each field. We know that the farmer has 5 fields, and each field is 3/4 of an acre. So, we can set up a multiplication problem like this. 5 times 3/4. To multiply a whole number by a fraction, we can convert the whole number to a fraction with a denominator of 1. So 5 becomes 5/1. Then, we can multiply the numerators and denominators separately. 5/1 times 3/4 equals 5 times 3 divided by 1 times 4 equals 15/4. So the farmer owns 15/4 acres of land in total. Just like in our earlier example, we have an improper fraction since the numerator is larger than the denominator. So, we need to convert it into a mixed number or a decimal. Again, to convert a fraction to a mixed number, we divide the numerator by the denominator and write the answer as the whole number. The remainder becomes the numerator of the fraction. Let's do this now. 15 divided by 4 equals 3, with a remainder of 3. So, we write our answer as 3 3/4 acres. Alternatively, we can convert the fraction to a decimal by dividing the numerator by the denominator in long division. Let's do this now. We're going to start by writing the numerator, 15 here, and drawing a long division symbol around it. Next, we write the denominator on the outside. In this problem, that is 4. To solve this, we need to know how many times 4 can go into 15 without going over. The largest multiple of 4 that is less than 15 is 12, which is the product of 4 times 3. This means that 4 can go into 15 3 times. So let's write 3 up above the division symbol. Now, multiply 4 by 3 to get 12, and write that 12 underneath 15 and subtract. We end up with 3 left as our remainder. So now we go into the decimal place. You can do this by drawing the decimal at the end of the numerator under the division sign and adding a 0, so it is now 15.0. Don't forget to add a decimal point above the division symbol too. We can bring the 0 down to our 3, so we have 30. 4 goes into 30 evenly 7 times. We multiply 4 by 7 and get 28. So we write 7 at the top next to the decimal point, and write 28 under the 30 and subtract, which equals 2. We have 2 left over now. So let's add another 0 next to our 15.0. It now reads as 15.00, bringing the 0 down, giving us 20. We know that 4 goes into 20 perfectly 5 times. So we'll write 5 above our division sign. 4 times 5 is 20. So we'll write 20 under our 20 and subtract, which equals 0. Since we have nothing left to divide, we can see our final answer in decimal form is 3.75 acres. Great job! You've just learned the 4 basic arithmetic operations and how to use them in different types of problems, including word problems. Keep practicing, and you'll be a math whiz in no time. Thanks for watching.